Hello and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands. I'm Dr. David Ajibade with the Brain and Body Foundation, and we are continuing our talk on COVID-19 and what it looks like in Nigeria, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. And of course, we have back in our studio today Dr. Chris Otabo, who is a consultant orthopedic surgeon, and shall we call you a health advocate? Because that's what you sound like.
Well, you won't be wrong.
All right. Well, thank you again for making it. So we talked a lot about some of the problems with COVID-19, especially the mindsets of our leaders and even of our people themselves, the changing landscape. And in this show, we want to talk first of all about your story because you are a COVID-19 overcomer.
Yeah.
You've seen it all, you've done it all, and you've experienced it. But also we want to talk about the treatment regimen, the approach, how it's been taken care of. And I remember during our discussion, we were talking about isolation versus treatment. Right now we're focusing mostly on isolation. We're not doing as much with regards to aggressive treatment of the severe cases, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with you and your story. How did this first happen?
Thank you. One Sunday, it was middle of May. I normally would preach. I'm a pastor. I preach online to my members. So when I woke up with cough. So I got prepared for my message, and while I was preaching, the cough was distracting me. So immediately after my message, I just went to my room and I decided to take some rest. And then within a few hours, the whole thing developed to severe fever with chills and rigors. I thought I was dealing with malaria. So I took anti-malaria, never worked, took analgesics, didn't work. The body pain is like what I have never experienced in my life. It was as though, hefty men were using hammer to hit all over my body.
Wow.
And I was sweating, drenched in sweat, as though I took a bath. So that continued, then headache. That continued for that night and the next day. So by the fourth day, I noticed that I had lost my sense of smell. I could not smell jack, not even perfume, nothing. It was zero sense of smell, and the sense of taste was also affected badly. So I knew immediately that I was dealing with COVID-19. But the severe symptoms for me just lasted for max 72 hours. So by the fourth day, by the third day, actually, I was already recovering.
Okay.
So I drove myself to the isolation center. I called the epidemiology numbers for FCT, and they invited me to come run my tests. So I did it. The test took about 5 days to come out, or 5 to 6 days. By the 6th day, I did it on a Tuesday, and the test result came out, I think on Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
By this time, I was fine. So, but when the test result came out, the NCDC, very efficient setup, they came and fumigated, is it NCDC now, or the epidemiology units? They came, fumigated the house, and then they advised that I go to the isolation center. So I followed them. I was initially at the Idu isolation center, but I didn't like because it was an open ward and the toilets were really bad. So I can't remember when last I shared a room with someone. So I insisted that I need to leave. I need to go to a place that has a private room. So I called my colleagues at the Asokoro Center, isolation center, and they got me a private room there. So I was transferred to Asokoro Isolation Center that day. The truth is, over 95% of the people in the isolation centers could very well be treated at home. But I think the idea is to isolate them, to prevent them from mixing up with others.
Right.
Yes. In the Western world, when people call in with symptoms like this and they are not very sick, they ask them to stay at home, isolate at home.
Exactly.
And if there are issues, they should call the hospital and come.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's the complete opposite. Really.
Yes, because once in a while you find people deteriorate.
Yeah.
You know, why isolating? Yeah, the hospital will be open for them. And I think this is the problem, because we are spending a lot of resources on people who are fine, whose immune system have already overcome the virus. But the critically ill people who have come down with severe symptoms are being turned away at the hospitals.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's a very heavy allegation to make. Are we saying that a patient is in a severe condition, and you're saying that even the public government hospitals are turning them back?
It's what I experienced. I wasn't told. It's something that I was involved with. I referred the patient. I mean, I know of 3 patients now who were referred to government hospitals, and the moment they see them, they start looking for excuses. They will never tell you that they are afraid of COVID-19, but the truth is they will never take them. They refer them away, and some of these patients go like 4, 5, 6 hospitals. When they are tired, they just simply go back home and wait until they die. So this is rampant, and I'm not talking of only in one place. Even right now, people who have other severe symptoms that may not be COVID are also suffering this. A church member of mine told me about his mom who had a stroke in Lagos, and they went to 7 hospitals. They didn't give them any space. By evening, the woman was taken back home. This is a woman who was conscious by the time she had the stroke. By that night, she had lost consciousness. The following day, she died. Yes. I can give you examples upon examples. Another lady in Abuja here.
But wait, if a person had a stroke, that would not raise the alarm of COVID-19.
Yeah, because if you have a stroke and you are having some difficulty in breathing, altered consciousness, you're already a critically ill patient.
Right.
And anybody can trace it to COVID-19. I mean, symptomatology. So you of course, there are many things surrounding a stroke that may make it look. But any critically ill patient now is at risk of being rejected. Yes. Another one delivered in a hospital, a private hospital in Abuja, went home after 4 days, developed symptoms, including vomiting blood and all that. Went back to the hospital, they refused. Went to 3 government hospitals, they refused to accept her. And then she went back home. So when I was called, I said, go back to National Hospital, and if they refuse you, let me know. I will take it up. Unfortunately, while they were in the car going now, after 3 days of frustration, the lady died in the vehicle. So these are the issues, and they are practical issues. I think that we are mixing up isolation and treatment. Yes. The question I keep asking is, why were we asking for ventilators when these things first started? Is it because we saw the Western world, trying to get ventilators?
Yeah.
Why were we asking for ventilators? Go and do your research. Across the country, I doubt if there are more than 8 to 10 people who are on ventilators right now. It may not even be up to that.
So are you saying that they're not using the ventilators, or there's no need for ventilators?
They are not using the ventilators because the patients that would have required ventilators don't have access to the hospitals. They are turned back. The serious cases are turned back, most of them. So, and these are the ones that would have required the ventilators. So we need to separate isolation from treatment. I think the isolation, the NCDC has to do with isolation. But the Federal Ministry of Health and the State Ministry of Health and the various hospital services, should be involved with treatment of COVID-19 patients. They should set up centers where if you are suspected to have COVID-19, whether confirmed or not, go to that place. Let them revive the people, because those centers will be well equipped with personal protective equipment. They will be well equipped. You can have like 50 ventilators or 30 ventilators, battle ready to take anybody until COVID-19 status is determined. Yes, and if you turn out to be negative, you cannot transfer to other hospitals safely. If you turn out to be positive, yes, that's why you are here.
Right.
We treat you. Maybe like a 1,000 bed center with all the specialists, intensivists, all the specialists on ground ready to treat. In most of the isolation centers now, you cannot even intubate a patient.
No way.
Yes.
And these are actually treatment, isolation centers. So they're not really treating them.
Yeah, they
is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. A few centers will treat.
Which is basically the medication.
Yes. No. Well, a few centers are doing some good job.
Yeah.
Like I know of, like the Gwagwalada Teaching Hospital.
Yeah.
Yes. Apart from the isolation for people who just have it, they are also doing some good work in terms of treating.
Okay.
But the level of critical care that we have now, the problem is when someone comes into, let's say for instance, National Hospital or any of the government hospital, let's even assume that they have the privilege of being received with those severe symptoms. The first thing they want to do is, we want to test you whether you are positive or negative for COVID. Then the NCDC people come and take the sample and leave. They are going to come back or call after 3 days to tell you the result. What happens to that patient?
Exactly.
Between that time when the sample is taken and when the result comes out.
Exactly.
That patient, the doctors there would treat them with a long spoon.
Yes.
Because we don't know what we are dealing with.
Exactly.
So, but if there is a standard treatment center
where we know that this is COVID-19 we're dealing with, whether
you are positive or not,
yes.
So they treat with all the aggressions, keep them alive. If it turns out to be COVID-19, well, we have already commenced the right thing.
Yeah,
continue. That is missing, and we should have that in different states, not mixing it up with normal everyday hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. We're talking about the problem with dealing with severe cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The problem is this: if a patient has a severe form of the disease, most hospitals are not equipped to handle such cases. And so the fear of bringing the patient in and having that disease spread amongst the other patients and the doctors is really high. But it's still an issue. I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, that people will continually reject the patients. Hospital will reject patients. Hospital after hospital will reject patients, and there's, it's like a gap, right?
Yeah.
Because
there's a big gap.
Because if there aren't any standard COVID-19 treatment centers, and the government is also saying that private hospitals should not treat COVID-19. They didn't say anything about government hospitals not treating COVID-19, but still, I mean, it's implicit that, it's implied that, well, if you can't treat COVID-19, that you shouldn't treat. And then the isolation centers, like, as you're saying, are not equipped.
They are not treatment. They are not real. They are not battle ready for intensive care.
Intensive
apart from
care.
Maybe a few. Yes. So, I can't really blame the government hospitals that are rejecting the patients. We need to interrogate it and get to the root of it so that we can solve the problem. If a center is not trained to handle COVID-19, even if you give them the PPEs, they still would not be safe. They will infect themselves, the doctors and the nurses, and infect the other patients in the hospital. So that's why they are quietly sending the patient away, looking for one flimsy excuse or the other to send the patients away. So that's where the Federal Ministry of Health and the government need to come in and bridge this gap. Just this week, recently, I think yesterday, India set up a 10,000 bed hospital.
10,000?
Yes, to treat COVID-19 patients, specifically suspected or confirmed. Yes, 10,000 beds. And then you can imagine the amount of human resources that will be going in there.
Of course.
You know. So right now, as a medical doctor, if I have a COVID-19 patient, I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do, because if you send them to government hospitals, they are likely to be rejected. And you can't send them to the isolation centers.
Why not?
You can't, because you don't even have access. Nobody can just walk in there. It will take the NCDC staff or the epidemiology staff to identify these patients from the various hospitals or from home and take them to that place.
You cannot walk up.
You can't go in there. I can't refer a patient to the treatment center. They'll ask you, where are your results? I mean, you can't. It doesn't work that way. It goes through the epidemiology department, the NCDC. They are the ones to say, okay, we are sending this patient to this treatment center. And it takes a process. The result, the NCDC will not refer you to isolation center until they have confirmed your result.
So how do hospitals in the US or UK take care of it then?
Yes, so they work with a high index of suspicion. See, during the heat of the pandemic in the US, President Donald Trump had to release 2 hospital ships, and they dock in the waters in New York. And what they said is, all the clean cases that are not COVID-19 related, go there and get your treatment. So we can free hospital beds for COVID-19 cases.
Okay.
Now, there's a high index of suspicion. And then, 2, their turnover rate for tests is faster.
Yeah.
So the time for, maybe within a few hours, they've gotten the result. You call in sick, and they take your samples. Within a few hours, they get your result. So there's no question. But here, we have, because of the limitation in the testing facilities and all that, it can take 3 days. Some people, it takes up to 7 days to get their results out. So between that time they take the sample and when the result comes out, what happens to that patient, whether positive or negative? And this rejection of patients has also affected those who are not COVID-19 patients. But because if you have heart failure, you have kidney problems, and so on and so forth, sometimes it also manifests with breathing problems.
Yeah.
And then they reject everybody alike, whether you are now COVID or non-COVID. And so that's a big problem that the government needs to look into very, very well.
Definitely. So even elective surgeries and all the other things are just pushed aside, really. Okay, so let's quickly talk about treatment. I know in the isolation centers they have the standard regime. The routine drugs are given, and like you said, most of the times it's people who are already mild, not severe cases, and they get through them. What can we do? What are your recommendations for those who want to prevent COVID-19? Because there's a lot of things being thrown out there.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're hearing about dexamethasone, we heard about hydroxychloroquine, and those have their own complications. But what would you suggest that people do?
At the moment, there's no cure for COVID-19 anywhere in the world.
Okay.
People are just touting some medications. Some have been found to be effective, others not really very effective. Okay. The latest one is the dexamethasone that WHO announced from a study. It only shows that for people with severe COVID-19 disease, those who are having respiratory distress and maybe on ventilators, the death rate has been, the dexamethasone is able to reduce the death rate by about 1/3, which is fantastic because it will save a lot of lives. But I want to sound a note of advice to my Nigerian brothers and sisters. You see, when chloroquine was announced, hydroxychloroquine was announced as a panacea for COVID, Nigerians went to start getting chloroquine in large numbers, and they were using it without any doctor prescribing it. How did I know? Some of my patients came down with complications of chloroquine injection.
Like what?
Toxicity, fast heartbeat, weakness, headache, drowsiness and all that.
Okay.
Yes. So I asked specifically, have you been using chloroquine? They say yes. Who prescribed it? Well, I saw it on TV that Donald Trump is using it and all that. It should never be done. Chloroquine might even be forgiving, but dexamethasone is unforgiving. If you take dexamethasone as a normal, healthy person with the intention of preventing COVID-19, it's actually counterproductive because it's a steroid. It weakens the immune system.
Right.
And so if you were not going to have COVID-19, you will now have it because you have weakened your immune system. Secondly, it's a drug that is a double-edged sword. It has its advantage, but the disadvantage are myriad if you don't take it with doctor's prescription. If you take steroid from outside, exogenous, which means because the body also produces its own steroid.
Right.
Then there are some conditions that will require us to also add to what the body is producing. But when we take steroid from outside, the body's steroid producing mechanism goes to sleep. And it takes time for it to come back, even when you have stopped the steroid from outside. So if you stop abruptly dexamethasone or any other steroid that you were taking, and the body does not have enough time to recover, there will be a gap.
Yeah.
And then it leads to what we call Addison's storm, which is lack of steroid in the body, and it can kill. The kidney will shut down, the respiratory system will shut down, everything will shut down. And that can lead to death. A lot of patients have died who stop their steroid abruptly. What we advise is you taper it down.
Okay.
Yes, you start reducing the dose so that you give the body the chance to start recover its own steroid production. But by and large, it's advisable that we should not even touch this medicine.
You're not supposed to use it since you said it's only for severe cases. So those people are already maybe even unconscious or they are battling for their lives.
Exactly.
And they give it to them, maybe even IV. But
Nigerians were, because of our poor regulation of medications, anything can go. And a lot of people are living in fear. And anything they hear can work. They go for it. And unfortunately, you can walk into any pharmaceutical shop or chemist and get more than enough of whatever medicine you want, even this dexamethasone. But in the Western world, it's controlled.
Yes.
You can't get it except with a doctor's prescription.
Yeah. So
for whatever it will benefit, I think people should take this advice.
Yeah. I mean, so I recommend strengthening the immune system. I don't like the word boosting because the immune system needs to be strengthened. It needs to be more intelligent. It needs to be more able to recognize problems and act on them, as opposed to boosting. And boosting just means that you want the immune system just go here. I don't know. I like the word strengthening and making more intelligent. So I use for myself, and I recommend to people, very strong natural immune strengthening supplements. As you know, we do a lot with sickle cell patients, so we use a lot for sickle cell patients, but also as a preventative thing. So it doesn't shut down the body like you do, because like what the body uses naturally. But other things, I know we're out of time now. I know you've recommended vitamin D2 and vitamin C and zinc in particular, because zinc is really an antiviral. In addition to the other things that it does. I would have loved for us to discuss, because I would have loved to hear your own perspective on what those do, but we've just been given a notice now that our time is up. So we're going to leave it at that you have to strengthen your immune system, but you don't want to strengthen it with you don't want to start taking dexamethasone and hydroxychloroquine. I mean, that's ridiculous, folks. Come on. We've passed that stage now. You know what to do. In fact, we even have our local herbs and native things that they can take, like ginger, right? Yeah. And other things. Garlic, ginger, yeah. So please, and vitamin D. You must take vitamin D. Me always say to take vitamin D. Yeah. We've come to the end of this other episode, and Doc, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
This has been educative, and I feel so happy, really, because I feel that we've really treated this COVID-19 case, the situation in Nigeria, like we ought to. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Folks, you've heard it all. So you got to stay safe and you got to make the right intelligent decisions. So COVID-19 is it's going to be here for a long time. So we've got to learn how to live and deal with it. Okay? Stay safe. God bless, and we shall see you again soon.